Dialectical Method from the mind of Hegel.
Let's look at the fascinating world of Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, an Enlightenment philosopher whose ideas pretty much reshaped the 19th century and the course of philosophy as we know it. Born in Stuttgart, Germany in 1770, Hegel was not your average philosopher. Imagine trying to wrap your head around the whole universe, including everything from our innermost thoughts to the vast expanse of nature and society. Well, that's exactly what Hegel aimed to do. So, in this video, we will see how Hegel wrestled with some of the biggest questions out there that still has people scratching their heads. So, diving into the world of Hegel, we peek into his early influences and ideals. Now, imagine yourself back in the late 1700s and early 1800s. The air is buzzing with the aftershocks of the French Revolution, and whispers of democracy, liberty, and this new thing called human rights are floating around. This is the backdrop of our protagonist today, Hegel. Born in 1770, at the same time the American Revolution was taking shape overseas, Hegel was shaped by the era of Enlightenment, a cultural and intellectual movement advocating for reason, analysis, and individualism. The Romantic movement, with its emphasis on emotion and individuals' experiences, also heavily influenced him. Hegel was also fascinated with ancient Greek philosophy, crediting thinkers like Aristotle with laying the groundwork for much of his philosophical musings that we are about to unfold. Now imagine a young Hegel sitting around with his buddies Friedrich Hölderlin and Friedrich Schelling, probably over a pint of whatever the 18th century equivalent to craft beer was, chatting about ancient Greek civilization, revolution, and how to fuse the ideas of Immanuel Kant with the ancient wisdom. These conversations were the seeds that would grow into Hegel's sprawling tree of philosophical ideas. In this period of his life, he began pondering deeply on the notions of the mystical aspect of love and religion, and how contradictions in both thoughts and realities might actually be roads to much higher truths. During this time, he developed something called the Dialectical Method, a framework for developing ideas that would help form his later ideas and future works of other influential philosophers. Hegel's dialectical method lies at the core of Hegel's philosophy and shaped the way he understood the world. Imagine this. You're thinking about something that you assume to be fact, anything really, and suddenly it hits you. There are deeper nuances to this assumed truth you are thinking, maybe even a contradiction. But instead of tossing the whole idea out entirely, you wrestle with it, continue to work out the kinks, and bam. You find yourself at a new, deeper understanding that reconciles the contradiction. This process that Hegel created is the dialectical method in action, an intellectual pursuit where ideas clash, merge, and evolve to discover truth. Now, Hegel boiled this down to a step-by-step process. He starts with a thesis, introduces its antithesis, which is basically its contradiction, and then these two duke it out until they reach something he called a synthesis, where the two ideas merge into a single, more nuanced truth. This synthesis isn't just a compromise of a truth and a falsehood, though. It's a whole new level of understanding that preserves the truth of the thesis and antithesis. Here's an easy example of dialectical method in practice. Let's think of the concept of freedom. As a thesis, we might say that freedom is the absence of external constraints on an individual's actions. Basically, the ability to do whatever you want without interference. Upon closer examination, you could say, this view of freedom is incomplete. Cue the antithesis. True freedom does not just mean doing whatever you want. Merely doing what one wants without regard for others or ethical considerations could lead to chaos or oppression. And then, finally comes the synthesis, where Hegel's dialectical method seeks to reconcile the opposing views of the thesis and antithesis. True freedom emerges when individuals are not only free from external constraints, but also actively participate in shaping their own destinies within a framework of ethical and social responsibility. This synthesis acknowledges both the individual's autonomy and the interconnectedness of freedom with ethical considerations and the well-being of society as a whole. Hegel saw this process at work in history, society, nature, you name it. It challenges us to see beyond black and white thinking and appreciate the complex, often messy reality of, well, pretty much everything. And honestly, in a world that loves to oversimplify, that's pretty refreshing. Moving on to the science of logic. Hegel's Science of Logic is an influential philosophical work, particularly within German idealism. Published in 1812, It serves as a foundational text for Hegelian philosophy, outlining his systematic approach to understanding reality and knowledge. So, Hegel's logic kicks off with ditching the whole idea of starting with assumptions. In the science of logic, Hegel applies the dialectical method to various categories of thought, such as being, essence, and concept, in order to show how they develop and transform into one another. This approach is kind of radical because it's not just about proving points with clear-cut arguments, but about understanding how those foundational blocks of thought shape our perception of everything: nature, spirit, the whole shebang. Diving deeper into our understanding of Hegel, we come to his philosophy of nature. Now, you might be thinking, nature, trees, rivers, the usual stuff. But hold on, because this isn't about a stroll through the woods. Hegel's main idea here is that nature is not just random chaos. It is a symphony of rational forces that have a logical structure. In this part of his philosophy, Hegel attempts to capture the essence of nature, not in a way that involves empirical research or microscopes. Instead, he's like that friend who looks at a tree and sees not just the tree, but the cosmic dance of molecules, ecosystems, and underlying patterns at play. This is about dealing with fundamental questions that science struggles to answer, such as questions of meaning and purpose. Hegel doesn't claim we can perfectly know nature. It is more about striving to understand the rationality embedded within it. Nature is not something separate from us or merely a resource to be exploited. He explores the relationship between nature and human consciousness, arguing that the human mind is not separate from nature, but rather a product of its development. He sees the study of nature as essential for understanding the human condition and the broader trajectory of history. All right, so now we're taking a look at one of the coolest ideas Hegel came up with: the philosophy of spirit. Hegel's philosophy of spirit, also known as his philosophy of mind, or Geist in German, is a central component of his broader philosophical system. It deals with the nature of consciousness, self-awareness, freedom, and the development of human culture and society. So, Hegel breaks down the philosophy of spirit into three parts. First, we have the subjective spirit, where Hegel goes all in on what makes humans individuals, including perception, cognition, desire, emotion, and free will. He examines how individuals come to know themselves and their world, as well as the ways in which they strive for self-realization and freedom. It's all about consciousness, emotions, and personal psychology. Then comes the objective spirit, which is basically the structures and institutions of society, including law, morality, family, civil society, and the state, how individuals relate communities and broader society. Finally, he outlines the absolute spirit, identifies the highest forms of human cultural and artistic expression, the arts, religion, philosophies, where we reflect on the very essence of what it means to be human. This whole idea might sound a bit dense, and, yeah, it kind of is. But what's incredible is how Hegel envisions humanity marching towards freedom and self-awareness as an ultimate goal. It's like each part of his philosophy of spirit nudges us closer to understanding not just the world around us, but motivations and desires at the fundamental level. And isn't that something we're all curious about? All right, so jumping into Hegel's thoughts on freedom. Hegel describes freedom in a sense that is different from what we might think of it as. It's not just about doing whatever you want, whenever you want. Nope. He says, freedom is the understanding and realization of one's true self within the structures of rationality. Basically, it's like reaching this higher state of being where you're totally in tune with both the universal laws of logic and your personal role within that grand scheme. Now, Hegel's dialectical method comes back into play here, big time. In Hegel's world is this ultimate freedom, where our personal desires align with the world's rational structure. It's this journey of the self towards understanding the absolute, where individual freedom and universal rationality embrace in a harmonious dance. Sounds pretty epic, right? Hegel thought that freedom was not just an individual quest. Instead, it is deeply woven into the fabric of society through our various laws, ethical standards, and government institutions. So when we talk about achieving freedom, we're also talking about how societies are structured to foster this alignment between personal aspirations and the greater universal rational order. Hegel distinguishes between negative freedom, which is the absence of external constraints or interference, and positive freedom, which involves the ability to act in accordance with one's own rational will. He argues that true freedom is not merely the absence of external limitations, but also the realization of one's inner potential and the ability to act in accordance with reason. Hegel believes that true freedom is achieved through ethical life, which involves the recognition of the rights and interests of others and the establishment of just social and political institutions. Ethical life allows individuals to realize their own freedom while also respecting the freedom of others within a shared community. True freedom is capacity for self-determination, where individuals are able to act in accordance with their own rational will rather than being controlled by external forces and impulses. This self-determination involves the full recognition and realization of one's own identity and goals. Hegel's influence is like a spiderweb, spreading through not just philosophy, but also history, literature, political theory, and even theology. His dialectical method? It became a toolkit for thinkers and movements worldwide. Seriously. But it's not just about who took a page out of Hegel's playbook. It's about the game-changing shift in how we understand ourselves and our place in the world. Hegel's idea that history, society, and even our personal lives are part of this grand, universal, and rational process gives us a lens to see the big picture. That everything, including ourselves, is interconnected and constantly evolving. And then there's some slight controversy. Not everyone was the biggest fan of Hegel. Critics argue his system feels too neat, like, can the messiness of real life really fit into this grand, logical plan? And yet, whether folks love him or love to hate him, Hegel's like that one artist whose influence you can't escape. It's everywhere, coloring how we talk about human rights, our societal structures, and even the very nature of reality. So, as we wrap this up, think about this. Hegel's not just some philosopher dude from way back when. His ideas, his thoughtful mix of freedom, history, and consciousness, they challenge us to see beyond the immediate veil of perception, to question and connect with the deeper hidden currents shaping our personal lives, culture, institutions, and universe. And whether you agree with him or not, the questions that he asks really make you scratch your head. Hegel's not just for dusty old textbooks. He's super relevant for decoding the complexities of our modern life. At a minimum, he provides some truly incredible food for thought at the dinner table. And so, thanks for listening. That's a wrap on Hegel.
Dialectic Method from the mind of Hegel. Thesis and antithesis, the spirit sequel. Who is he? Philosophic king, no equal. Where's the logic in history? It's legal. When to read his phenomenology, why ponder truth, shaping ideology. Be deep in the rhymes we're weaving. Hegel's genius in reason we're believing. Who are thinkers, minds that keep on dreaming. What's the absolute? His notion got us scheming. Turn the pages, hear the spirit speaking. Revolutionary minds, they keep on seeking. From Berlin to the world, his thoughts are so streaking. Hegel's legacy, in every theory creeping. Master slave, a dialectic dance in every social bond. You can catch a glance, freedom's path. Through reason we advance. With every step, we give the future a chance.